What does it actually look like to heal a witch wound? Well, if you've been following this mini witch wound series, in my last video, we talked about what the witch wound is and where it comes from. So if you're interested in that history, then I encourage you to go back and watch that video. Because today we're not going to be focusing on the history, we're going to talk about what healing it has actually looked like for me personally. Healing the witch wound really isn't one big moment or peak experience where suddenly all of your fear disappears. It really happens through many small moments that rewire the patterns. So for me, that has been where I choose to express myself even in the face of fear. And looking back, I can see that all of those little moments completely changed who I've become and how I've shown up and what's happening for me in my life. I've been on my healing and spiritual journey for almost a decade now, and for a long time I didn't necessarily hide my spirituality, but I definitely kept parts of myself small and hidden. And what I've come to realize is that the witch wound goes so much deeper than just spirituality. You don't have to be a spiritual person to relate to the witch wound. It really shows up in so many other places in life. And looking back, I can see this pattern in so many areas of my own life. I would pick and choose what I said around different people because I was worried about sounding weird, being misunderstood, being projected on, or people just not getting me and judging me or thinking I was crazy. And I think for a lot of sensitive people, it becomes second nature to shrink and hide parts of ourselves to feel more normal and to fit in and make it easier for others to understand us. Or to try to over-explain our experiences or our knowledge or intuition through logic, when really intuition and many spiritual things and experiences don't fit into normal societal standards for logic and reasoning. So without even realizing it, we start to disconnect from our own authentic expression until we don't even really know what that looks like anymore. But it really wasn't just being afraid that people would think I was weird for being spiritual. It was much deeper than that. I had this habit of constantly questioning myself. If something felt off, I'd wonder if maybe I was just being dramatic, or if my intuition was telling me something, then I'd look for someone else to validate it and see it. And I became really good at explaining away what I knew deep down because I had internalized that trusting someone else's judgment was safer than trusting myself. And I also noticed that whenever I spoke about something that wasn't part of the accepted narrative, whether that was spiritually or in unhealthy relationships or unhealthy family dynamics, there was this fear underneath. Not just like, what if people disagree with me, but what if telling my truth costs me something, costs me the people that I love, costs me harm. For me, one of the biggest places that this showed up was in some toxic relationships, but mostly in my family. And this was one of the first big places that I began healing this witch wound. Because if you remember in my last video on the witch wound, I talked about how even going against the narrative of the system would get women and people labeled as being a witch and punished. And in my own family and my own life, as I healed, there were things that I started to remember and process. And then I couldn't unsee it or ignore it anymore. I started to recognize patterns that my family and I had normalized for years. And eventually I reached a point where I couldn't keep pretending that it was okay just because everyone else was pretending or not looking. And speaking up, setting boundaries, and eventually even stepping away from those dynamics was one of the hardest things that I've ever done because it meant risking The very things that we're wired to want as human beings: belonging, connection, love. But when it came at the cost of my own well-being, I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And that's why this idea of the witch wound landed really deeply for me. So in my last video, I talked about how throughout history, people who challenged the status quo or refused to conform to societal norms or narratives were often punished in some way. And I don't think those patterns have disappeared. I think it's just changed form. Today, many of us still carry this fear that if we stop playing the role that everyone expects us to, that we'll be rejected, misunderstood, cast out, or punished in some way. And whether that happens in a family, in a community, or even just socially, the nervous system often experiences it as the same type of threat. And at this stage in my life, one of the biggest ways that I've noticed myself healing this has been starting this YouTube channel. Every time I upload a video where I'm talking about intuition and healing, spirituality, sensitive and empathic people, or doing channeling, there's still a little part of me, sometimes a big part of me, that worries that people will think that it's weird or judge me or think I'm crazy or just not get it. But the difference in these two big ways that I've been healing my witch wound is that I feel that fear deeply, but every single time I do it anyway. I choose myself even when others judge me. I tell my truth even when I'm crying and shaking through it. I post videos even when a part of me is cringing inside when I'm doing channeling and doing new vulnerable things. Because I know that it's teaching my subconscious mind and my nervous system that new ways of being can be safe too. It's building those neural pathways that tell my brain and reprogramming my nervous system to know that we can do hard, scary things and still be okay and still be safe. And teaching myself that it is safe to be seen when for so long in my life I hid. And this also builds incredible self-trust, because another huge shift has been learning to trust my own inner knowing. There was a period of my life not so long ago where I was constantly looking outside myself for answers, reading more books, taking more courses, joining more programs, or consulting with a coach for their opinion. Really, all of that was looking for someone or something else to give me the answers or to tell me what was true for me. And don't get me wrong, I learned a lot through that. It's helped me build the skill set and the knowledge that I have today to do this type of work professionally. But I also realized that I had started giving my power away and my authority away. So healing the witch wound for me has looked like listening to my own intuition first and trusting that even when I don't know everything, no one knows everything, I know myself and my experiences better than anyone else though. And I've learned that my inner guidance always knows best. Because even when I did consult with someone else for the answer, I saw how it basically led me around in frustrating circles that actually just landed me right back to going with my own intuition of what I knew was right for me all along. And in this, I've noticed so much more freedom and peace. I've noticed myself creating so much more and building my life and my business in ways that are actually right for me, not just what the best practices are for the industry. And I've been making YouTube videos and redesigning my website, which I'm so excited to share with you soon once it's finished. I've been creating meditations and hypnosis tracks that are actually making big differences in people's lives, as I've already shared many with clients and friends to test them out. I've been actually using all of that knowledge that I gained through my studies and all the wisdom I acquired through my lived experience and boldly sharing it with the world to actually be of service and help others with it. And Instead of constantly consuming more information, I'm actually doing the dang thing and creating from my own knowledge and experiences. And that feels so different for me. And it hasn't been easy because I've really been allowing myself to be visible before I feel ready. I used to think that confidence came first, or it had to come first before I could start. But now I know that it's actually built in the messy action. Every video I post, every story I share, every time I've spoken about something that's deeply personal, I've become a little less afraid and trained myself to know that I can survive things even when they're scary. Because healing it doesn't mean that the fear disappears. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions or assumptions. And healing the witch wound does not mean that you'll never fear criticism again or that everyone will understand you. For me, it means those things no longer dictate whether I share my voice or not, whether I share myself or not. And that feels like freedom and reclaiming myself from a witch wound that has tried to keep me small and quiet and hidden. And it's so much bigger than me. I truly believe that right now the world is changing in powerful ways. Many people are awakening to deeper truths about the world and becoming more conscious. Many sensitive, intuitive people, especially I think women, are rising and doing this same thing that I'm doing. And that is so, so powerful on an individual level and on a collective level. Because sensitive, intuitive women have the power to help catalyze great shifts and change in this world for the better. Even when it's not done in crazy big visibility ways. It's like a light turning on, and every light turning on helps the next one turn on, and that ripples out into the world, creating positive change. So if you're watching this and wondering whether you're healing your own witch wound, maybe don't ask whether the fear is gone and let that be your indicator. Instead, ask, are you expressing yourself a little more honestly than you were a year ago? Are you trusting yourself even just a little bit more? Are you making yourself smaller or a little bigger? Because I think healing often looks very ordinary while it's happening. And it's only when we look back that we realize that so much has changed. So in my next video, I'm going to share the 10 signs that you're already healing your witch wound. Because a lot of them are more subtle than people realize. And if you'd like to experience the healing meditation that I created for healing the witch wound, it's in the witch wound video that I put out right before this one, and I'll link it here and below this video. See you next time.